I have
Okay.
to say, okay, are we ready? Okay, well, again, thank you, everyone. We are beginning our open session. There is nothing to report out from our closed session prior to this meeting. And so we move towards our consent calendar, which are just our minutes from February 5 and 24. Any questions on any of? Okay, seeing none, can I get a motion for approval?
So moved.
Jones,
Second, Abikoga.
Abikoga, and Ms. and Auden, if you wouldn't mind helping us out.
Yep. Syok,
Yes,
Jones,
Aye.
Abakoga,
Aye.
Flagger,
Yes.
and Constantine is now present.
No, I'm here.
Okay.
Aye.
Okay. And Klein.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes with 6 votes.
very much. We now move to our the Santa Clara Santa Cruz Roundtable. This is a very specific discussion item. It's really to provide direction to the ad hoc committee of Mayor Klein and Vice Mayor Jones on communication with the roundtable meetings that can be agendized moving forward, and how we communicate and use the consultant. And so really, if I could go backwards, communication in terms of what has been conveyed thus far and how communication should continue.
Sorry to bring this up, and I just want, because it's our main item or kind of our first item other than consent, just as a question to, I guess, Kat, or actually, as far as starting this, from an agenda standpoint, it looked like we said 3:30 was our start time. We didn't say we could start early. So I'm worried that conceivably somebody from either the SCSC roundtable will show, or racial, just from a procedural item standpoint.
You know what, you are correct, and I'm looking at the agenda now. Normally, when you convene into closed session, you don't necessarily have the time when you start an open session, but we do on this one. If you want to wait, I think we've only got 4 minutes. And if we want to just wait, and I don't think anybody would care about the consent items, but if we want to just wait 4 minutes to see if there's anybody that wants to join us from the public, that might be a wise thing to do. Thanks, Larry, for pointing that out.
Thank you.
And then, Kat, would you recommend we just wait and not even look at some of the other things that are easier, like agenda planning?
Why don't we just wait for, it's only 4 minutes.
Yeah, it's only 4 minutes. In a moment, it'll be only 3 minutes.
Yes.
So we could all just take a break and get a drink of water or something. And
Thank you.
Yes. I do have to share, because someone pointed out, will we be ready for when we go back to real life mesh? For those who don't have school age children, what we're finding is that as kids go back to school, they don't know how to behave anymore. Like, we are getting so many complaints for behavioral problems.
I think that makes sense.
Well, with a parent of 20 somethings, it doesn't end. So.
I guess, I couldn't tell the Richard that was on our call, but, I don't think that was a child.
Well, that was interesting that there were a lot of people trying to get on that meeting. That was very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question for all of you city officials. Are you finding that you have less work or more work now that we're in COVID?
So much more.
Great year last year.
So much more?
Yes.
Yeah.
Last
I was
year-
actually talking to some people that work in cities, and I'm talking city staff, and they were saying that it just seems like the work has gotten so much bigger because nobody takes time off. Everybody's working from home. So people are emailing at like 7 o'clock at night, and then people are responding, and it just seems like it's never ending. There's no real differentiation between home time and work time.
Definitely not. So,
Yeah, I think that's fair. Except you might have your dog with you, which is better.
Of course, then you deal with the barking dog and all that good stuff too.
Right.
yeah, but it somehow breaks the ice. Everyone's like, oh.
Yeah, I think our first planning collaborative call, they had a guest speaker who was talking. She was an epidemiologist and was talking to our planning officials. And I think she had a toddler on her lap the whole time. And it was, kind of the first call at the beginning of COVID where he had a lot of people, and our consultants handled it really, really well. And they just said, we're all in a new space. Let's ask for a little kindness from everyone. And, we're in a new world. And anyway, I thought they handled it well.
Okay, we're at 3:29, everyone. One more minute. Oh. Okay, we're at 3:30. So let's move to Santa Cruz, Santa Clara Roundtable. The agenda item is to provide direction to the ad hoc committee of Mayor Klein and Vice Mayor Jones on how to communicate with the roundtable regarding consultant use, meetings, and what is considered time sensitive. And so if it would be helpful, Chappie and Larry, if you could just give us what has been communicated thus far. I think there's been differing messages. And I know, Chappie, you prepared a flow chart of how we envision communication to move forward. And then what I would like is confirmation from the executive committee. We put that in writing, and then that just is conveyed to the roundtable moving forward.
Okay.
If I can, I turn the floor to you, Chappie and Larry.
Yeah, so I'll kick it off, and then I'll put up or share the flow chart to give everybody an idea of at least how I'm thinking about the communication and process flow. But as far as what's been communicated, initially at the last ad hoc meeting, we communicated to the roundtable representatives that we were putting a hold on the process and putting a hold on having them meet. And then I had a follow-up conversation with Mary Lynn, and she asked if they can at least have one meeting where they can address and get information from the FAA and resolve a couple of other issues, administrative issues. And so I gave them the green light, or gave her the green light to have one additional meeting as long as they had legal representation at that meeting as per our requests and requirements. Since then I've had follow-up conversations. I had a follow-up conversation with Chris from the consultant with ESA. And because there was some confusion and about who can speak to whom and what the communication flow should be. And so I created a flow chart, and let me share that with you. And when you first see it, it's going to look like Charlotte's Web, but I will walk you through it. So, so we have the roundtable, and as a requirement, they're to have a roundtable counsel or attorney, as well as they're going to interface directly with ESA, the consultant. And then the communication flow will also go from the roundtable to the roundtable chair and vice chair. And the chair and vice chair will also interface with Mariko and myself as the president and vice president of the Cities Association. And obviously that communication flow will continue on to the executive board. As far as communication from the consultant, it will go, in my vision, from the consultant to, again, the roundtable, the chair and vice chair, and then me and Mariko. And then it'll be communication from the consultant to Andy as the executive director, particularly around reviewing invoices, contracts, and all the other administrative functions that are required to manage the relationship. The consultant will also interface and communicate with, again, myself and Mariko, as well as the chair and vice chair. And there will not be a direct line of communication from the chair and vice chair to Andy or to the executive board. The attorney will have a direct line of communication to the chair and vice chair, me and Mariko, and there may be situations where there's a need for them to have direct communication from the council to the executive board. So I'll let you guys absorb that a little bit and want to get your feedback.
Thank you. And we thought it would be helpful to put this on the screen, even though it does look like Charlotte's Web. But as we all know, the relationship we have with the roundtable and the consultant and now their potential attorney is somewhat complicated. And so hopefully by having something to visually look at, we can all digest it and make changes as appropriate to see what is realistic and what makes sense. So thank you, Chappie, for initiating this draft. And so if I can, let's first, Larry, anything you'd like to add to this flow chart?
No, I think, Chappie's done the main work here. And so I appreciate all of his time in dealing with Mary Lynn as well. So no, nothing else to add.
And so I think the most important thing that I've learned, at least in the past 2 weeks, is that while the communication between the roundtable is primarily with Larry and Chappie, with the CC to me, thank you both for taking that on, is that we also need to make sure that Andy, as executive director, is CC'd so that she understands what work is happening, even though she's not directly interfacing, so that when invoices and contracts are coming to her, she has the context of where these are coming from.
So,
Margaret?
Thank you. So thanks for the chart. Super helpful. Is this for the interim, or is this part of the I'll just call it negotiations, for lack of a better word, but with you, Chappie and Larry, working with the roundtable folks, the three ad hoc group members, I think, for a long-term working relationship.
So this is an interim proposal. We had an immediate need to address the communication flow and a lot of the confusion and misunderstanding. So this is an initial take for a short-term solution. Now, the final solution might look a lot like this, but for the purposes of our decision-making and this discussion, this is an interim step.
Okay, thank you.
Nisa?
Just a follow up to that, regardless if it's interim or long-term. So if an executive board member is contacted by a member of the roundtable, chair, vice chair, other member, is it that we cannot talk to them about any issue they want to raise directly with an executive board member?
There's nothing that says that you can't talk to them. My preference would be for you to reference this chart and just refer them over to me and Mariko first to address any questions they have or resolve any issues. And then if they're not satisfied with that, then we can actually move it to the executive board as a whole. That would be my preference. That way we can kind of consolidate and control the communication flow and information flow, which will prevent a lot of miscommunication, misunderstandings, and other issues that arise when you have multiple people communicating about the same thing.
No, I completely understand the intent, Chappie, and what we're trying to do. My concern, and for a lack of a better word, the perception being somehow we're putting a muzzle on the roundtable members. So, for example, they are a group that, let's say, for example, hypothetically,
Mhm.
they want to bring something to the executive board for approval, right? They have some request, whatever it is, and they believe if they meet with us one-on-one, no Brown Act, we're not doing any serial communication at the executive board level, they'd be able to convince each of us to support whatever request they have. And this is just a hypothetical. I mean, we see it in other organizations. Is that the kind of communication we would still say, don't talk to us? Or is there a smaller framework in which if it relates to X, Y, Z, then go talk to Mariko and Chappie, versus this broader category of any communication between the roundtable members and the executive board?
No, I understand your question, and I can't think of a specific hypothetical off the top of my head, but I understand the concept that you're trying to convey, and I'm sure there are issues out there that would be conducive to having a direct conversation from a member of the roundtable to the executive board. Again, the intent is not to muzzle anyone or create barriers for communication. The intent was to actually have a consistent and clear communication.
I agree.
And two, we actually can't prevent someone from the roundtable talking to an executive board member anyway. They have every right and ability to do that. It's just a question of letting them know that we have this process, and our preference would be for them to go through that process. But if they want to talk to you directly to lobby or convey their opinion, then they have every right to do it.
Right. No, and thanks for that, Chappie. And I understand. And I'm wondering if maybe, and I see a lot of hands raised, we could talk about, because I can think of narrow categories where it makes sense that should 100% be directed to Mariko and you, but I'm thinking much broader. And then the second question I have is, do we have a roundtable attorney?
One has not been identified yet.
Okay, so is the plan still, therefore they can't move forward with any roundtable meetings until we have a roundtable attorney in place?
Right, so they have to be identified and approved by the board, and then enter into a contract through the
And then
city.
my last question is, I brought it up a couple meetings ago because I am not close to the roundtable. I have no idea what's on their plates and what's urgent or what's not urgent. And I think when I first brought it up, the response was there's nothing urgent that they need to move forward on. And so I'm curious, if that is still the case, then this question I'm about to ask is moot. But if there's something that they need to make a decision on, and I remember Du Bois from Palo Alto had brought up one thing on a separate meeting, but if there is something for them to make a decision on and we still don't have an attorney, what's the solution for making that decision?
If they don't have an attorney, then they can't meet. As far as the urgency of some of the items, I've actually gotten some mixed messages. Some of the messages I got that there are urgent items, and then other messages I got that they aren't as urgent. So I'm very receptive to allowing them to go ahead and have at least that one meeting to resolve those issues, whether they're urgent or not, as long as they have an attorney, and then make a decision on a one-off basis moving forward, whether they have additional meetings before we get all of these other issues resolved.
Okay, thanks, Chappie. And I love how we have the executive director completely separate from the roundtable. I think that, I appreciate a lot about this chart, so thank you.
Margaret, you were next.
Actually, I think Rich and Kat were before me.
Okay, thank you. Rich?
Thank you. So I may have missed this in your presentation, Chappie, but is the roundtable aware that they cannot do business without a lawyer?
The roundtable leadership is aware, and I want to say that has been communicated to the whole roundtable. I didn't have direct access to the communication, but I believe that the whole roundtable is aware of that.
So my question is then, how are they asking to meet if they know they can't meet without a lawyer? Or are they actively searching for a lawyer and they're wanting to meet after they receive counsel?
They requested to meet. They were aware they needed a lawyer, and so the understanding, which was very clear, that we had to identify and secure a lawyer in order for them to have an actual meeting. So that's very clear.
So I guess I'm confused as to why they want to meet with the FAA and why we would allow them to meet if they still don't have a lawyer. I'm kind of.
We're not going to allow them to meet without a lawyer.
I'm sorry?
We're not going to allow them to meet without a lawyer. So that's just not going to happen.
So once they have counsel, then they can meet anytime they want, correct?
They can have that one meeting that's been.
Or just one meeting?
That one meeting, yes.
Okay, so maybe I missed it. So is that not clear to them, or did I miss that? They're just waiting to get a lawyer.
So it's very clear to them that they need to have a lawyer.
Okay.
They've been authorized for this one meeting to resolve those issues. And then everything else is on hold until we get all these other issues resolved.
Understand. And then my last question is, where is the ad hoc committee on this chart? Where would it?
I didn't put the ad hoc committee because in my mind, that was a separate process. And I wanted to address this process first. And the ad hoc committee will actually would be somewhere over here.
Okay.
That's working on a permanent solution.
And I lied. I do have one more.
Sure.
It just left me. So darn it. It was a good question too.
I'm sure it was the greatest question ever.
No, well, I know. When is the next? Is there another meeting with the ad hoc committee scheduled?
We don't have another meeting scheduled yet.
What would facilitate another meeting? The need for another meeting?
Once we get an agreement on this process, once we consult with the board as well as council on some of the other issues and get a consensus, then we will move forward with the ad hoc process.
Great. Thank you very much.
And then Kat?
Why don't you let everybody ask their questions first, and then I just want to give everyone a reminder at the end.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Margaret?
Thank you. So my question was about the ad hoc as well. I can't remember when we decided, was it January meeting or February meeting to allow the ad hoc to work with the roundtable ad hoc group for, I think it was 3 months or 2 months. I'm just wondering.
January and 3 months.
Okay, so we're coming up on that in April, right? In light of that, do we, I mean, I guess you have a month, which is still a lot of time, but yeah, at that point, I guess I'm just trying to. Yeah.
No, I understand your question, Margaret.
I don't know how to ask it, but I think, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out.
No, yeah, I understand your question. So, and this is an executive board decision, but in my mind, since we paused the process, that we should extend the 3 months in all fairness, because we did put a pause on the process.
I guess.
But that's the executive board decision.
Okay. Yes, I guess I was gonna request that we revisit that, because in light of, new happenings, that may change. I mean, it's definitely weighing on my decision as to what to do.
Mm-hmm.
If we even, continue this or not. So I guess I would request that we discuss it and not automatically extend the time.
Got it.
Okay. And I could certainly put that on the agenda for the next meeting. Unfortunately, I didn't agendize it, and so I don't think we can make that decision today. But I will bring that to the next meeting. My question to Chappie is, if there is a conflict over, understanding that this is an interim, if you have parties that say something's time sensitive and you have another party saying it's not, how do we resolve that? Because you're getting to be an expert, but you're not. So who makes the call of what's time sensitive?
So I think that you and I should make that call, Mariko, in consultation with both the consultant, the chair and vice chair, and potentially the legal counsel if necessary.
Okay. And then my next question is administratively, and I don't know if this is a Chappie question or Laurel question or a Cat question. Administratively, our paperwork, like our MOU says that the ED is in charge of staffing. How do we resolve that in this interim period?
If that's directed to me, Mariko, I don't have a good one for you on that one.
And so, Kat, like, do we have to change our MOUs to reflect that that Chappie and that we have an interim process?
No, I think you can have an interim process while you've given them some time you've already said that you want to them to separate, or you want to come up with some sort of arrangement where they become their own entity. And this is the interim process, which they're going to follow until they get their own attorney, because that was the main thing. And I don't think you need to change anything in the MOU right now.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then any committee questions before I turn to Kat? Okay, so Kat, you have the floor.
Yes, and this is really nothing to do with what you were discussing, other than the fact that Anissa had said something that kind of triggered a little concern. Be very careful if you have members of the roundtable coming to lobby you on an issue, because that could be a violation of the Brown Act. All right. And we can talk about that further at some other time, but that's just something that you need to be very careful about. You certainly cannot allow your opinions to be known, because if you get more than, if they find out more, if they find out your opinions, then it's already a violation of the Brown Act. It should always be done in an actual meeting.
Okay.
And then, so if Chappie, you can summarize, or I can summarize what we think we heard from everyone.
So the summarize, sounds like there's a consensus on this flow chart. There were a couple of concerns about individual roundtable members approaching the executive board. I think we talked through that. There's a recognition that there's a separation between the executive director and direct contact with the chair and vice chair, as well as roundtable members, and that the ad hoc committee may or may not continue our work based on the decisions from the executive board in terms of extending the deadlines.
And I will certainly, and I'll add on that I'll bring that to the next executive committee meeting for that decision. One other clarification, if I can make the recommendation, is that what we discussed, we put in writing, and that be conveyed in writing. I think one of the issues that I heard was, does the full roundtable know? And if we could just communicate everything, I know that you and Larry will convey this, but if we can put things in writing so that we have it in writing and convey to the entire roundtable, I think that would be helpful.
Great.
Okay.
And Mayor, there is one attendee. I don't know if they want to provide public comment on this item.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Let me look at my attendee list real quick. Councilmember Way, if you'd like to speak, just raise your hand. Otherwise, I'll just assume that you're here to listen. Okay. Seeing none other, Councilmember Fliger.
Thanks, very good. I'm sorry, I stepped away from the camera.
Here.
Nisa is good. Just confirming that, so for all topics, we direct them to the president and vice president of the Citizens Association. Any topic, we're not going to narrow the scope. Any topic we should not directly discuss with the roundtable members under this solution.
Under
Okay.
this- Yes, that'd be the preference.
I think it would be helpful if we carried this in a motion. Again, the summary is that this is the workflow of information, communication during this interim period when we are serving as the project managers. Information will be funneled in writing and through Chappie. Consultant use will be determined by Chappie in consultation with myself and the roundtable, it sounds like, on what's considered time sensitive, and no activity, absolutely no activity and no meetings until a lawyer is assigned. Can I have a
So
motion?
moved.
Fine,
Okay.
second.
And Auden, if I could just have you call the motion.
Did we lose on?
I'm not able to share screen while
I will get out.
is also.
There you go.
Thank you. And so that was a motion by
Chappie,
and
and
seconded.
then
Fine.
Klein.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jones,
Aye.
Jones, I, Abakoga,
Hi.
Abakoga, I, Fliger,
Yes.
I, Constantine,
Aye.
Constantine, I, Klein,
Aye.
Klein, I, and Sayak.
Aye, yeah.
Sayak,
Thank
aye.
you.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you all. And again, I'll type this up and then I will share it with all of you as well as Chappie to convey in writing. Thank you. Next agenda item, racial justice. I wanted to just raise this as a discussion item. I know we have our ad hoc committee of Chappie, Rich, and Nisa, but so much activity, unfortunately, negative activity has been happening that I would like for the Cities Association to address. I'm glad Steve is here because I know the county just passed a resolution against the Asian American the hate crimes that are happening. I would like Cities Association to pass such a similar motion. And I didn't want to jump above the racial justice ad hoc committee. And so I wanted to see if this was something that we can discuss today and bring to the full board next week.
Well, I'll start out by saying I'm absolutely in support of a resolution and a statement condemning violence against the API community and other forms of, however, the extent that we want to go in terms of condemnation, I'm completely in support of. I know that we're scheduling another committee meeting, and Steve is hopefully, if you haven't gotten an invitation already, you will, to have a follow-up with both the initiatives that we're currently working on, as well as a discussion in terms of how we can come up with other initiatives to support that effort to speak out against, Asian directed violence and harassment.
Thank you, Chappie. Margaret?
You and thank you for bringing this up, Mariko. I was just wondering, I don't know if anyone else was on here, but the county has convened the task force on hate crimes, and I was wondering if I know Steve can probably provide a lot more information about it, but if there's some way of maybe we could working with the task force or expanding our scope. I know that you originally had housing and I think it was police reform,
Yes.
but and adding, this hate crimes and the work of the task force to the scope of your committee work, just to kind of expand things out a little more.
And that will definitely be part of the discussion.
Thank you.
I think both Margaret and I saw the data, and one of the things that was shocking to me was the low numbers. I personally believe people aren't reporting, which is why we have such low numbers. But I also know that if people don't report and the data doesn't support it, then it makes it harder to create policies and legislation. So I was talking with Andy, and I'm thinking of using May. We usually have a general meeting and using this as a potential item for discussion. And also, again, I'd love to invite DA Rosen and Assembly Member Lowe to our next meeting next week. They've done I think one PSA, but I think this is a timely subject. I think this is something that unfortunately is not going to go away anytime soon. And if we can work with them and the county in this effort, I would be completely, I would support that and I would welcome that. So.
And one of the reasons why I said, acts of violence and harassment, because particularly where we are, it's the harassment that's the predominant issue. I mean, it's not necessarily illegal for somebody to be a jerk, but it's definitely wrong. And how do we speak to that? How do we address it? How do we change hearts and minds, which is a very complicated effort. And I don't have the answers, but it's something that we need to try to figure out.
I agree. And I think having DA Rosen attend and listen, because to your point, the harassment, I think people self-select of what to report to police, because I don't know if it'll rise to a crime. But again, if the numbers don't show what's happening, then I think it's easy to say there's no problem. Steve, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I know the county has had this discussion. Anything you'd like to add?
Well, thank you. And I really appreciate Chappie being invited to the committee meeting. I would love to attend, both to help represent the county, and this certainly aligns with my values. I hate bullies, and I think this is a form of bullying. I know it's absolutely underreported, and it didn't begin when former President Trump started making disparaging remarks about the Asian flu and all that. Just a very slight correction. The Board of Supervisors will take this up next Tuesday. I know it's a slam dunk, because who would disagree with this? Well, the good people would not disagree with this. They'd say, go forward and meld this into the other racial justice issues that are really important to address. In terms of the commission that I think is being held, chaired by Supervisor Chavez and Councilwoman Esparza, I really don't know much about that. I just read about it in the paper a few days ago, maybe like some of you. So I'm happy to look into it, but maybe that would be something to discuss in the next committee meeting.
And thank you for that correction and clarification. So so if there's no further discussion, then I would like to recommend that we bring a resolution similar to what the county has passed to our next Board of Directors meeting, discuss this as a potential item for our May general meeting, and invite Assemblymember Lowe and DA Rosen to also speak to what they have been doing.
So moved.
Can I have a second?
Second, Bobby Koga.
Bobby Koga, thank you. And then Auden.
Excuse me, can I ask a clarification real quick?
Yes.
Do you want any, is there any requests or are there any changes with the committee? Or was that a request of expanding the committee's role or not? Or,
So I'm going to look to the three of you. Like, do you mind if we're adding on to your work and doing it here at the executive committee?
I'm fine with it. I pretty much already accepted the additional responsibility. But let me not speak for my my co-chairs.
so for clarification, are we expanding the committee or the committee saying three and you're willingly accepting the additional?
So we're expanding the committee. He is the only other person I knew wanted to be on the committee.
Okay.
Well, Chappie, if I may, I can jump in. So I 100% support expanding the scope of the committee to cover this as well. But I do think if we announce it at the meeting, I mean, bear in mind, the original scope for the committee was very narrow, and for whatever reason, we didn't get a lot of members wanting to join us. And so by expanding the scope, it's possible that we have more members wanting to join, or we have executive, as Marika said, do we just keep it here and this is the committee? So is the plan, I mean, I think I'd be shocked if Mr. Constantine doesn't agree. So if the consensus here is to expand the scope of the committee, are we bringing this back now to the board to say it's an expanded scope? If you're interested in joining the committee, let us know. Or is the plan that we agree to expand the scope of the committee, but we don't extend an invitation to non-executive members, we just keep it for the executive to be the committee?
If it gets any bigger, it would have to be a board. The board would be the committee then.
Exactly. So it's either because it's all of us, or we expand it to
Well,
members.
yes.
And what I'm saying is, you know, when it was one limited scope, didn't get a lot of people raising their hands. It's possible with this expanded scope, we have more people wanting to join. And how are we going to allow that?
Margaret?
So I know, like in the past, and I'm now heading the transportation committee, and we haven't met yet to decide the scope. So like, I don't necessarily think you would, if your preference wasn't to put it back out to the board, I don't think you'd have to. I guess my question was, and I can't remember because it's been so long now since we had a general meeting in person, but did we have a committee, like an organizing committee for the general meetings in the past? And should we be doing that to focus on the May meeting, or are we looking at just, doing this, focusing on this topic for the entire year?
Actually, I turned to Larry. If we were supposed to help, I'm sorry, I don't think I did.
No, so I'll answer that. Definitely with everything that was happening with COVID last year, and as you see, we're still trying to figure out how to build large, let's say, large meeting rooms. We've slowly been scaling up how many people are meeting and all that. I still think we're having those problems, kind of growing pains. We decided not to do a meeting last May. Just two things I wanted to say, though, that because of, and this is one of the things with subcommittees, we have to be careful from a Brown Act standpoint, that if this was you already have half the executive board there, so no one else from the executive board can be part of that committee, or it becomes then an agendized meeting and publicized and all that. So I think what you have now is meaningful, and you can conceivably bring it up. I'll leave it up to you whether or not you want to have a call out for more wider board members at our next meeting. But I do think how you run it is kind of up to the subcommittee, and I have not called my first housing committee. I do have a lot more interest, but it's figuring out whether or not we're going to focus on housing or unhoused issues or things of that nature. But it's up to you, Mariko, on what your topic is and what your focus is going to be at that May meeting, assuming that we have a May meeting this year, and whether or not that's in person is a whole other whole other set of issues depending upon where we stand in May. So it's not specifically, in the past has never been a committee assignment or a committee kind of focus. It's been the topic of interest of whoever the president is. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you.
Hey, can I ask the chair and the board to allow my committee to meet? We're trying to schedule something over the next 2 weeks to kind of figure some of this out and then come report back to the board. If we can have that space to do that, that'd be appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you need permission to create your for your own meetings, right?
No, I mean, to answer some of the questions that
Oh, I
we're
see.
having right now.
Got it. Of course, of course. So, and just real quick, we do have someone from the public who'd like to speak. Hung Wei. And I don't know if Auden, do you bring her over as a panelist or, okay, there you go. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. This is Hung Wei from Cupertino City Council. I would like to commend the executive board of the City Association to talk about the the hate crimes that's against API recently in the community. You might think that it's not very prevalent because it's not being reported, but I belong to a lot of WeChat group and Line groups. There are a lot of hate crimes, little here, there, people here in the supermarket, people were treated, with, the China virus thing. So I really appreciate, especially Maruko, that you're talking about it and taking a stand. Congressman Ro Khanna and Assembly Member Evan Lowe are planning a event. So if the Cities Association e-board would like to be invited into the planning and be part of it, I can relay that to Congressman Ro Khanna if that's your wish. But I want to thank you for paying attention to it, because in this atmosphere, in this era, just saying that we are not racist, we don't do hate crimes ourselves, it's not enough. We need to stand up and be together and say we're anti-racist, we're anti-hate crimes. So take action. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you for doing
Thank
this.
you, Hung.
And so Chappie, to your question, yes, if you guys want to meet and figure out the logistics, absolutely. It sounds like we have a motion for next week, which is the immediate action, and then we can bring this back for discussion at the next executive committee meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, and so that moves us, oh, there is a motion, sorry.
Okay, are we ready to vote?
Yes, please.
Could we restate the motion, please?
Yes, the motion is that at the next committee meeting, at the next board of directors meeting, we will bring forward a resolution similar to what is being proposed at the county level, with a discussion item that this will be brought to the board of directors at the May general meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, Klein,
Yes.
Klein, aye. Constantine,
Aye.
Constantine, aye. Flagger,
Yes.
Flagger, aye. Abakoga,
Aye.
Abakoga, aye. Jones,
Aye.
Jones, aye. Sayak,
Aye, thank you.
Sayak, aye. Motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, so we now move to our last agenda item, which is agenda planning for next week. And so Andy, if you can I'm sorry, did Steve have? Okay. Andy, you want to walk us through what we have proposed so far? You're on mute.
Just hold up a banner for me. So there'll be a Legislative Action Committee meeting at 6 p.m. And Rich and I are still, we may have, Assembly Member Rivas has indicated that he is available to come. And then we would have, for the board meeting, we would have The consent agenda with the financials, the draft agenda, also going to put on there again the committee report, the committee assignments, since we've had a few tweaks since the last meeting, just for informational purposes, and so that everyone has that. We would have a report out from the Legislative Action Committee, and if we adopted any positions on any legislation, we would be able to affirm or not those decisions. Do you want the decision for the roundtable as a part of the consent agenda, or do you want that on the agenda at all?
I don't think it's necessary.
Okay. Would you like to give an update on where we are with organizational status?
If I prefer, if actually that's part
Great.
of your executive director report.
Okay, great. We also have the new executive director for the Housing Trust. We tried to get her to attend last month and she wasn't available, but she is available to come this month. We thought we would do 15 minutes, if that sounded okay, and it would just be an introduction to her. She'll also just give a little update of what they're working on. We have sent an invitation to Jeff Rosen and Assemblymember Evan Lowe to discuss the hate crimes issue, and they both have indicated they are available. I believe an hour is what you wanted for that piece of it.
We
Or
yeah,
do you,
so
or do you?
we were scheduling availability. Assemblymember Lowe has 30 minutes. DA Rosen has an hour. I say, let's say 30 minutes discussion. Or do you think, I can't gauge our community. So do you think 30 minutes or more? Really, it's an opportunity for them to share the work that they're currently doing and then to answer any questions and then ask how we can assist.
So that sounds, I'll just go, Marika. So that sounds fine to me. I saw the agenda and I was going to ask whether or not we've reached out to Ahmad, who is the new head of SVLG. We had talked about a few times inviting him to speak as the new CEO for SVLG. And so I don't know if he's available to come next week. But if he is, I mean, he's part of, diversity, equity, inclusion. He's also the new CEO, and he's doing a lot of great work around diversity and inclusion. And so, as we had talked about, the subcommittee had raised before, we would love the idea of him coming to talk to us about what he's doing with the different companies and see how the cities can support him there. So I'm raising it again only because, so if he's available, we would love to see him, and that would obviously shorten Jeff and Evan's time. If he's not available, then I agree with you 100%. If you give Jeff and Evan time, they can use that time, and people may have a lot of questions.
So I think the only reason that we haven't asked Mr. Thomas to come yet is because you were worried about time, that we didn't have enough time to give him. And so if anyway, I'll leave it up to the rest of you, but I just wanted to say that was why we had not been able to be successful in getting him here.
What if we did Housing Trust 15 minutes, 20 minutes for SVLG, 30 minutes for DA Rosen and Assemblymember Lowe? And then so that gives us, that's really over an hour. And then with all the other items, that ideally we wrap up in an hour and a half. Huh? And then if SVLG CEO cannot attend, then it gives a little bit more flexibility. Do you think 20 minutes is a respectable amount of time? I don't want to insult anyone. Okay, I don't see anyone. Okay, so let's do that. If we could do 15 minutes and then 20 minutes and then 30 minutes. So.
Okay, great. And then we are going to bring forward a Women's History Month resolution. And then I also needed clarification on whether you wanted the resolution on the hate crimes, if you wanted that on this agenda or you're bringing it back for the next month.
I'd actually like to bring it on this agenda.
This agenda. Okay, great. So there'll be two resolutions for you on this, one for Women's History Month and then the other kind of reconfirming and similar to what Santa Clara County did.
Yes. So I look to my colleagues, any comments or changes to the agenda for next week? Okay. And then for other, don't forget, we do need an executive director's report. And then we also need space for city manager report.
Right.
Okay. And that's all that I have for today's agenda. So if I see any other, would anyone like to raise anything? Okay, seeing none, then I think we will call today's meeting adjourned. And I thank you all again for